Hi everyone, this is Utkarsh. I'm the founder of Introbot AI, and Introbot is a network of top 1% decision makers, CXOs, founders, investors. We have more than 20,000 businesses and decision makers on the platform. And Introbot operates across a WhatsApp chatbot and enables different kinds of opportunity discovery and professional relationships. And joining here with me is Ankit, founder of Heyo Phone. So Introbot and Heyo are partnering over a series of webinars, and Heyo has been the force behind this. Very, very interesting startup, and I will let Ankit talk more about Heyo, but feel free to join all of the webinars and sessions going forward as well. We have been working together over the last couple of months, and this is going to be super exciting. So thank you everybody for joining, and over to you, Ankit, to talk more about yourself, introduce yourself, and what's Heyo and my operator.
Sure. I'll talk about Heyo Phone first. As we understand, the whole ONDC platform, it's trying to democratize how how these services or the businesses connect to each other, connect to consumers, etc. We saw an area where we believed communication is still going to be a key in interacting with customers. And while everybody was trying to solve different part of the problem across SMBs, we felt, and because of our history, we felt more inclined towards solving customers' communication journey. So Heyo Phone is a mobile-first, customer communication app which helps businesses manage their entire communication at one place. So think of it as a virtual number where you have all calls coming in, shared between all your staff, and all calls in WhatsApp run on the same app. So the idea was to democratize the whole technology stack so that even smallest of business is able to use it in a way where, we'd have seen enterprises or large businesses manage their customer communication. Something that we believe on as ONDC is going to democratize a lot of these services. There'd be a lot of pressure and need of these small businesses to manage the communication at their end, and they need these technologies to be able to manage customer interaction in a much different or much advanced way. Right now, all these marketplaces are probably handling, the customer communication on their behalf. But when the moment, they join the ONDC network, the whole burden of communication is on them, and how do they gonna manage it? So that's where Heyo Phone comes in. We really democratize, this by making it super simple app, which practically takes 2-minute time to, just get on board and connect to your staff and then get going. So the whole idea was, and in the previous journey of my operator, we democratized this whole journey to maybe half an hour, 1 hour. We really let organization create their communication layer in probably 30 minutes of time. But this time we felt even more crazy. We felt, why can't we reduce it to probably 30 seconds and really empower every last mile business even? And that's what became the journey of Heyo Phone. It's currently been used by close to 10,000 businesses at this point of time, and it's rapidly growing month on month. This has been just 3 quarters we launched Heyo Phone, and it's already 10,000 businesses which are using it. And we see a phenomenal number, along with the ONDC. We think this is a wave that we are riding, that more and more businesses adopt, or more and more consumer adopt ONDC. Probably we get a ride, and we get to empower their customer interaction journey. So that's about Heyo Phone. Moving on to Utkarsh again.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ankit. We'll come back to more about Heyo and how do you plan to leverage ONDC for that. But next is Utkarsh Goswami. You have been closely associated with ONDC. Why don't you talk a bit about your journey, your background, and what brings you to ONDC? And
yeah, so thanks Utkarsh R. So I'll refer to you as Utkarsh R. So there's no confusion. And thanks Ankit. So I've been associated with the ONDC for not a very long time, but in terms of how things are evolving and fast, I might as well be a veteran here. I look at 2 basic things at ONDC. One is, of course, the program and vertical for technology solution providers, which is anybody who's building tech for ONDC as an ecosystem partner. The second thing that I handle, which is in some way related to the value chain, is demand at ONDC, which is buyer applications and their success. So these are the 2 broad areas that I work in, and I'm part of the network expansion team. And yes, and ONDC is something that we'll discuss in detail. Of course, Manoj and Shayak both have been associated with the ONDC way before I even knew what ONDC was. And, they'll be able to shed some light. But all of us have seen it, change and evolve so much. And, if you think about it, Ankit mentioned, I think he used the word platform once. So, that's the ONDC official line. We are a network, we are a capability. And, I think we'll come to the brass tacks, and I'll give you a lot more, details much later, but that's about it. And my previous background, I've worked in technology SaaS firms and as head of business across, enterprise SaaS and SMB SaaS in various roles in companies. So that's sort of my background. Over to you, Utkarsh or Roy.
Thanks, Utkarsh. Over to you, Manoj. So Manoj, congratulations for your latest round of funding. So Introbot is also part of the Antler network. So it's a moment of pride for me to see Plotch doing so well, especially in the current market scenario. So why don't you share a bit more about your background, your crowdsourcer journey, and your recent fundraise, and what does Plotch stand for?
Sure. Thanks, Utkarsh, and great to be here. Love speaking about ONDC. We live, breathe, and drink ONDC every day. So I keep telling folks that even if you wake me up at 12 in the midnight, I can start speaking ONDC. So love speaking about ONDC. We basically let's understand the role of Plotch, right? The Plotch.ai today is the largest ONDC Rails infrastructure company in India right now. And if you look at ONDC, right, what ONDC is trying to do is bring all these, 50 crore to 70 crore customers from one side and, 10 crore SMEs from the another side. Now, for these, 50 crore customers and 10 crore SMEs to seamlessly transact, right, seamlessly create, orders, pay each other, solve grievances, you need serious software infra. I mean that is fundamentally the need that a network has. It needs software infra. Like for you to drive your car, you need like a serious infrastructure of expressways and roads and those kinds of stuff, right? So we are that. We basically provide software infra for anyone who wants to join ONDC network. We make it very simple for them to join ONDC. It's a pre-built solutions that we give. They basically use our solution, go live. We provide the fastest go-to-market if you want to join ONDC. And good part is we also have the largest suite of products. Whether you have, how do you become part of ONDC as a seller app, buyer app? So we have seller app, buyer app solution. We also have, NotePay, which we have partnered with IDFC First Bank, so that you can we call it node to node payment, but in the ONDC parlance is buyer app to seller app and seller app to buyer app, payment. We have a NotePay product, we have a Note Desk product, and we are working a lot of other products, so that we can supercharge ONDC network with very fast go to market strategies for large clients. Right? So that's basically our role is. I personally believe, I keep saying that in a lot of webinars that I do personally, is that ONDC is the 8th wonder of the world. It is interesting what we are building. It is an Indian innovation. It is not a Western innovation. This is an Indian innovation. And good part is we are building Indian innovation at scale. This is not something that is getting built in one city or two cities, basically covering the whole country. So that's what keeps us, folks very excited and, very proud to build what we are doing, in ONDC. And, yeah, very excited. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Manoj. Utkarsh here did mention about the term population scale. So we'll come back and dig more into that. But now, Shayak, please tell a bit more about Eunimart and your.
Thanks a lot, Utkarsh. Quick intro to me. I'm Shayak. I'm the founder and CEO of this company called Adya. I'm an ex-Indian Navy officer. I used to be a nuclear biological chemical warfare specialist, a helicopter operator, some other fun stuff. Left the Navy, started some restaurants and hotels by the beach in Goa, had some more fun. And then I went to Paris to do my MBA, had some even more fun. And from there, went on to join this company called Rocket Internet, where I was heading 21 countries for them, created a huge cross-border e-commerce marketplace, more than $1 billion in transaction. Did all that, and then realized, people need a platform through which they can connect to every channel, manage however they want to sell, create their own marketplaces. So I created this company called Eunimart, which was quite successful. We helped thousands of Indian businesses go to 100 plus countries. And that was very successful in a day and time when that was not the norm. We expanded that business to Singapore, Middle East, US. And then sometime in August, I came back to India to launch Unimart in India. And somehow I got in touch with ONDC and I was like, man, I've been around the world. I've led businesses around 4 continents. This I've not seen. I used to always take the example of China, that look at how digitally active they are. And then I see this and I'm like, my God, the digital rails and what they're doing. And so, one fine day I was talking to the ONDC team and they said, you know what, you need to come to Delhi tomorrow. It was a Saturday morning, took a flight to Delhi. And I started talking to the ONDC team, got very inspired. I said, to hell with whatever I'm doing, I'm going to stop everything and I'm going to do this. It took me 3 months. I stopped all my international businesses and I started Adya. Quick understanding about Adya, right? We are a complete end-to-end comprehensive ONDC solution. We call it ONDC in a box, as simple as that. See, on ONDC, there are 3 types of players. There are these strategic players like SIDBI, Sybil. What they do is they provide their infrastructure. They're not buying or selling. They're providing their infrastructure, their policies. Then there comes the operational players. So you have, Paytm, Meesho, some examples, right? People who are doing buyer apps and seller apps so that buyers can go and buy or sellers can go and sell. But then there is a need, as Manoj mentioned, for large corporates or enterprises. When they want to go live, they want to create their own applications, right? How will they do that? That is where ONDC in a box comes in. Now, ONDC in a box basically is 3 line items. Line item number 1, all 5 types of apps: buyer app, seller app, issue and grievance management app, reconciliation app, and logistics app. Whatever app you need, it's there. You pick and choose, composably put it together. Second is all these apps as plugins. So let's say you're running a banking app or you're running a CPG app. Whatever you're already doing, you can plug in our app into it. Your app will instantly convert to ONDC. You don't need to do anything. And lastly, converting this entire thing, you remember what Utkarsh said, population scale. How are you going to get 1 billion plus people to buy and sell? You're not going to teach them one more app, right? You need to do this through conversational commerce. So we are building a large language model built for India and for commerce that will help people to just talk in their local language. I just need to go and say, bech do. I need to take a photo of my product and the cataloging should be done. Not magic. We've actually managed to make it happen. Everything through conversational commerce. We're using WhatsApp as one of the interfaces. So this is what we do, right? And we're taking some very large enterprises live on ONDC who are bringing lakhs of sellers, crores of buyers, everything on our tech stack. So that's kind of what we do. And, this is such a massive network connecting every buyer to every seller. That's where the interesting part comes in. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit about Adya. And, I'm really, really excited to be here. And Manoj and I are old pals. We've met each other multiple times. And I'm very happy to be sharing the stage with him. Congrats, Manoj, for raising the funding.
Thank you, Shayak. Yeah, definitely. We have interacted a lot. So good to see you again here.
Yeah, Shayak, you were mentioning your return to India, and I was also remembering my time when, after spending almost 10 years in North America, I'm back to India. And I realize life in India is so much better. Like, you can literally order crepes and sandwiches at 3 a.m. at night and you get delivered in the next 20 minutes. So things have really, really improved and leapfrogged in India over the last decade. And it's super fascinating to see the rate of progress. And that's what excites me to be back in India and build for India and from India. So
If I may take a if I may take 10 seconds more. See,
Yeah, yeah.
basically what the government has done, unlike any other country that I've seen, they build the rails, right? So for healthcare, one tech stack. For mobility, the CLP, which is the comprehensive logistics platform. And then for commerce or transactions, you have ONDC. For payments, you have UPI, everything. And once you start putting it together, we are going to get to 5 trillion any which way. But how do we go from 5 to 20 trillion? India had these massive PSUs, right, at one time. They're being replaced by these digital rails. And this is so inspiring. No other countries come close to doing anything like this. And this is what we will export to the rest of the world, this tech stack, this digital rails.
Awesome, awesome. So this is really great, Shayak. And this kind of segues me to the next question that I have for Utkarsh. And to all the panelists and attendees here, the format would be that now that we have done a round of introductions, we'll go over each panelist and have a bunch of questions that we have prepared in advance. And then after that, we'll open the ball for attendees if you have any questions. And meanwhile, feel free to post all your questions on the chat. We are looking into it and I will ask our panelists. So, Utkarsh, the question is for you. Segueing from what Shayak was mentioning, something has really changed in the India stack and how the government is doing things going forward, especially innovations like Aadhaar and UPI and now ONDC. So can you share your insights into what has really changed and why these new age teams are so much more efficient? What are the insights and how do you plan to gauge the receptiveness of the different businesses that are coming onto ONDC?
Yeah, so thanks, Utkarsh. Great question. And typically, there are visionaries and there are historians who study recent history, and typically hindsight is 2020. And with that premise in mind, I'll talk about a few things that happened in India and what is the transition that we're seeing. See, globally, if you look at it, if something is a challenging area, or you're seeing monopolies or duopolies, typically how whether it's North America or even Europe, how they try to handle it is through regulation. There are specific acts that were tried, that were sort of that were sort of pushed through, or they were trying to push through, let's say in the US Congress, etc. Of course, because of the lobbying, it didn't happen. But Europe is a more recent example of how they're trying to solve for duopolies and monopolistic behavior on this thing. What India is doing is, India realizes scale, and anything that has scale and population scale implications, you have to simplify it. You have to simplify it at the very basic level. Let's take an example of ONDC, right? So within ONDC, the main premise is, no matter how much, in closed circles and closed ecosystems and closed echo chambers that we see that e-commerce is, big in India, etc., it's still 6% of the entire population. And that's staggering. Usually China would have 30-35%. Developed economies are tending towards 30% penetration, both on the consumer side as well as the seller side. If we talk about the consumer side, it's mostly the urban centers that are generating demand, and everybody's vying for the same piece of pie, and unprofitability. Might I add? So none of them are profitable in spite of all the money that they've spent, because pie is so small. And similarly, on the supply side or on the retail side, it is again, dismal number in terms of penetration. So what we're seeing is actually, in spite of 50-20 years of e-commerce penetration in India, 95% of Indians are unserved or underserved in this thing. And, this is despite, mobile penetration level of one of the highest in the countries, right? 85-90%. Everybody owns at least a feature phone, etc. Especially after the the 4G revolution, etc. This shouldn't happen, but still keeps on happening. So what the powers that we decided is that we will solve it. We will not go through a regulatory route. What we will do is we'll try and create infrastructure that allows for fair competition. And that's how ONDC came into being. Even if you look at UPI, what UPI did is, it made things interoperable in that sense. Suddenly, earlier, if you might remember in 2016, before UPI, if you were in company X, if you used a company X app as a consumer, you could only send money from your wallet to a merchant who had a QR code or a merchant dashboard of that company only. And what a UPI did right now, you could now suddenly send money from your SDFC bank account using a Paytm consumer application to a PhonePe QR or PhonePe merchant, and into their Axis bank account. So that's interoperability. Now coming back to the problem, how do we solve population scale challenges and opportunities? What we do is we take very, very simple principles that will scale. One is unbundling and the second is interoperability. We take the same two things, and can we define rails or infrastructure here that will sort of enable fair competition and sort of remove these so-called barriers to entry within the value chain. Now, any e-commerce entity in India, before, if they had to, if you had to become a platform, and you had to look at everything. You had to look at consumer tech, consumer operations. You had to look at seller side tech, seller side operation, delivery tech, delivery operations. All of this required massive amount of capital and management bandwidth. And what this created was an artificial barrier to entry. And that's what we see right now in food. There are, two giants. That's it. None of them is profitable. Just by the way, in mobility there are two giants. Intercity mobility, and in in retail, D2C or other sort of e-commerce, there will be two giants, and then everybody's chasing their profitability. In spite of all the hoo-ha, none of them, and all of the billions of dollars spent, none of them are profitable. Now, what you suddenly do is take unbundling, for instance, that can you create an infrastructure that allows for specialists to come in and the value chain that I talked about in e-commerce, which is consumer tech, delivery tech, and seller tech. Can you make them unbundled? For example, if you are a company that only focuses on great customer experience, UI, UX, can you still participate in the ecosystem? And those are the fundamental building blocks that we sort of used. And then, of course, if you're unbundling various activities, then these activities have to talk to each other, and these tech stacks have to talk to each other. And with these two principles in mind, we came up with the concept of ONDC based on the backend protocol. Now, what is ONDC? If you talk to me about it, ONDC is a communication language between different systems. It's a protocol. It's a network. It's a capability. It's not an application. It is, not a regulator, etc., etc. What ONDC defines is communication standards. The closest, sort of a similar company that I would think will be W3C, which defines, the standards for HTTP and HTML, and the internet runs on it. So we see ONDC as a basic building block that enables innovation in B, unbundling, and C, interoperability between different systems. Now the entire value chain. So suddenly, for example, I'll take some examples. What are the companies now participating in the e-commerce value chain, and they're thinking of becoming a consumer side application, for example, or the seller side applications? These will be, let's say, large websites that are affiliate partners to current e-commerce platforms. They're thinking of becoming a consumer side application because they have high intent traffic. They're redirecting the traffic to XYZ platforms. We have OTT companies now thinking of becoming of consumer application or buying applications on this side. So that's or we have POS players that have suddenly become seller aggregators and are participating in the value chain, or or ops heavy companies that use tech, and they're good at seller operations, and they'll use the tech that Shayak and Manoj sort of provide and become a seller side application and participate in the e-commerce value chain. None of this was possible before the ONDC infrastructure came into place. And as we say, when internet was invented and the first message was sent from from CERN to UCLA, nobody could have predicted a Google or Facebook coming in. So what we've done is we build that basic rails and infrastructure.
Yeah, thanks so much, Utkarsh. We'll come back again to you. Maybe you should grab some water if you want. Yeah, coming to Shayak. Shayak, ONDC is great. There's a lot of work around it. Can you tell a bit more on the tactical level side of it as to how can startups benefit? How do you onboard your startup on it? What's the next step? And what's the journey like?
Okay, so it kind of depends. I'll take a cue from what Utkarsh was saying and just expanding on it. See, basically, he was absolutely spot on. Globally, people have tried to resolve this regulatory, or if you look at certain countries like China, they've tried to aggregate total power through threaded mechanisms. But in India, you're trying to do it through digital rails. Now, for startups, this is an unbelievable opportunity. Think about it this way. A lot of the way the startups have learned is to copy some of the models that worked in the Western countries. But for the first time, we have in India core capabilities that have never been built anywhere, which means newer models and newer requirements will come out. And will come out in three sides. Okay, so first, if you're a small startup and you're going to focus on the tech, you can focus on various niche tech capabilities that are required by various players on ONDC. You create a payment solution. You create a cataloging solution, which everybody can use. You create a instant logistics solution that everybody can use. These are not capabilities that existed or could have existed without these rails in place. Okay. Then comes the larger startups that already have buyer side penetration. Now, I'll give you some examples and things that we could not have imagined, which is why I'm picking these examples. Imagine somebody has created a keyboard and there are keyboard on the mobile and there are, let's say, 1 crore users of that keyboard. Now, imagine, can that keyboard become an app? Because you have 1 crore engaged users who can easily buy through the keyboard. And this is something that will not strike us instantly. We will think only commerce apps can get into commerce, but that's not correct. Anybody who has buyer-side engagement can very easily create a buyer-side app, right? I'll give another example. Imagine you're into your glance, right? So many people use glance. Can you become a buyer-side app? By converting those users and redirecting them to buy from you, by showing the products that your nearby sellers are selling, by showing the intent, the intent already, that person is looking through that particular image, right? Okay. On the seller side, similarly, there are all these e-commerce providers who are struggling to compete in the market, right? Because as Utkarsh mentioned, and by the way, ONDC is across domains. It's across finance, B2B, retail, food and beverage, mobility, education, healthcare will come, agriculture will come, exports will come. Can you imagine? I'm building a farm to fork startup. I was meeting two very enterprising young one man, one woman, and I was sitting at an event in Mumbai, and they're talking about how to raise funds and how difficult it is to compete in the market. And I sat down with them and I said, why do you need to do that? You don't need to generate the demand. You have the farmers with you. Connect the farmers to ONDC, the demand will come. So imagine this. People who have traditionally never been, because as Utkarsh was very correctly pointing out, right? You had to do both sides. And so what was happening was those that had more money were aggregating more buyers and then coming and telling the sellers that you have to pay me this percentage, if I may call it a cut, in order to participate or get access to my customers, right? That doesn't need to be anymore. See, ONDC is the closest example in the world you'll find of a perfect market. Every buyer can see every seller. Doesn't matter which app the seller is sitting on. And every seller can see every buyer, as in the demand from every buyer will go to every seller. This changes the game for aggregators, for marketplaces, for distributors. So if I was, for example, becoming a distributor for a larger player, I was only selling to Kiranas or people who would directly buy from me. I don't need to do that anymore. I can sell to anybody. So, and for the more technically minded people here, it moves from a market polynomial. It's a polynomial because there are different variables with a weight to each, to a graph theory, where each node has multiple connections around it. And the strength of the connection to the next node is what ensures you sell or not. And that strength could be on the basis of your terms, your price, your reputation, anything. So on the buy side, on the sell side, on the tech side, there's so much that can be done. And this is just amazing what's opening up. It's a finite versus infinite game. I'm not going to say more than that because others will want to talk about it, but back to you, Utkarsh.
That's an amazing way to put it. I never thought of marketplaces like that. I mean, it was always like when I think of marketplace as a business person, it's always demand and supply, and you have to bring and solve the chicken and egg problem. But now that you mentioned that, I was thinking through my head, this is absolutely brilliant. I'm looking forward to what happens next. I mean, as more and more people kind of come in.
So just a point here, Utkarsh, to Shayak's point, it doesn't even compute or it doesn't make even logical sense. So for example, if I am burning and I'm getting more consumers, but the only way I monetize is if my seller makes a sale, then why am I operating in a closed universe? Why am I only dependent on my demand from my consumer application? Now it doesn't even make, if you think about it, we're so used to the platform way of thinking that, that you were pointing out, Utkarsh, that, you have to look at both sides of the equation. That's actually not the case. You can be profitable by focusing on just one side. And yeah.
And to Utkarsh's point, Koshi said this in another meeting I was attending, and he put this so nicely. He said, the internet was meant to be interoperable. And then commerce platforms came and put a closed loop around it. It's not required to be. Every website can be opened on every browser, man. So why can't you search on Amazon and the seller be on Flipkart and the shipper be on Danzo? Why can't that happen? That's the beauty of it, right?
Any quick numbers, Utkarsh, as to how many transactions merchants do we see on ONDC? I wanted to ask this.
Okay.
This is a good thing to add here.
That's a great question. So even, ONDC doesn't track that because, all of the transactions actually happen peer-to-peer between buyer apps and seller apps, actually. And ONDC, as far as ONDC is concerned, but, I can give you some indicative numbers here. And you have to put these numbers in context of what we were doing 3 months ago. See, for us, typical to any other platform in the market, e-commerce platforms, to scale transactions, you will have to get more consumers, you will have to get more sellers. But the beauty of a network is that you have to get more and more enterprises that either are focusing on consumers or sellers on board, and it will grow exponentially. So 3 months ago, we were averaging 100, 200 transactions per day. Right now, we are above 1 lakh, 1.2, within 3 months, 1.2 lakh sort of transactions per day across categories. And, this number will only go up because, again, network effects. It is a collective effort of a Craftsvilla, My Store, Paytm, a pin code, all of these sort of generating demand on the consumer side. And of course, Unimarts, etc. Everybody sort of working on the seller side. And as more and more aggregators join the networks or inventory sellers join the network, the network grows. And, there's strictly no, because it hasn't been done before. So there's no correlation in terms of where will be, even tomorrow. So, as let's say some big aggregator joins through and uses Unimart's tech stack to join and gets in 10,000 stores on Manoj's consumer application, some bank uses and gets in more demand, this number can be tenfold. So it depends. So, but right now, just to put it in context, it's growing exponentially.
Awesome. Great numbers, great growth. And I'm hoping it will be in crores very soon over the next few months. So, Manoj, you recently raised a massive round, right? I mean, from Sequoia, now Peak 15 Ventures, Antler Global Founders Capital. So what was the thesis that you figured out that would really work for your business, and how was the whole pitching and raising funds journey? Because this is not 2021, this is 23, and things have not been really looking good on the VC side of things. So you've been a serial founder, but yet this is a tough market to crack. So what was your thesis and how did you go about it in the fundraise journey?
See, basically, if you look at from a VC angle, and I've been a VC before, so I'll tell you what they primarily look at, right, in a very high level, is there has to be a large market opportunity, which is they are looking at, which may not be there right now, but is there for 3 years or 5 years from now. Right? There has to be a hockey stick curve in any of the growth, that you are projecting, that it has to suddenly become non-linear. And of course, the model should be scalable because the hockey stick curves has to be there. So whatever you're doing has to be scalable, the revenues and the product and whatever, right? And the last thing is a team, right? They will look at team and whether this team can execute and make happen what they're promising, and really extract out the opportunity and make it really big, right? So that's basically the primary thing that you look at, right? Now, for us, basically, a lot of these things automatically, if we look at, ONDC is in infancy stages compared to, I would say, what it would be, right? It's still early days, though. So this is a great time for VCs to come in and capture opportunities, which, which will ride on the ONDC wave in the coming decade, right? So there's a early opportunity here. It's a playground which is getting built. So you have to catch the best players and see if you can build a great team and build an outcome, right? So that is one thing. The second thing is, it is a network. Network always has network effects. Network effects create non-linearity. So by that definition itself, whatever in ONDC, whatever will happen will be a non-linear growth, right? So that's something, a lot of, I meet a lot of VCs almost every week, and a lot of folks, a lot of VCs actually don't know about ONDC a lot. And that is something, you have to, educate them and take them through a journey. Good part is that we have been with ONDC, building ONDC in the ONDC network since the early days. So a lot of this education we have been doing since the last year, and that is culminating now, right? In the fact that now a lot of people are looking at this and saying, oh great, I can see multiple unicorns getting built here. So non-linearity is inbuilt in the network. Now the products that we have built, is around scalability. Whatever we are doing from a product perspective is making, in helping clients, large enterprises, mid-scale enterprises to come on ONDC and bring the two edges of the network. I call them two edges of the network because buyers and sellers are primarily at the in the network, basically at the edge of the network. Helping them come into this, right? So there's this whole scalability angle which we are solving because of a product suite. And basically we have done, for us, this e-commerce is not new. In Craftsilla we have done this. I have been associated with the e-commerce for the last 15 years. I've seen all the babies that you see since the early days of e-commerce, right? So e-commerce, it sort of runs in our blood kind of stuff. So from that perspective, the team sort of, the tick mark fits in, right? So basically the thesis is not just, single point thesis, it's always a multi-point thesis for VCs. The tick marks has to be there. And for us, fortunately for us, it worked out and we could, take the funding even in such a tough scenario.
Manoj, as a follow-up question, it's interesting what you said about the non-linearity of things. I was going through your website and I realized that you are taking a very horizontal approach. Instead of going and finding one problem and solving for that, it's kind of a suite of features and products that you're putting in one place. Why would you go and do that instead of going like super vertical?
Yeah. So it was a great question. I think this is a question, if I understand, if I can sense it, right? Usually VCs would look for people who have taken one problem and are focused and looking at it and building tools and software around it and taking it like. people like us basically who are building the rails, right? And the infrastructure. They unfortunately you can't if you're building a highway, you have to really build a lot of other things around it so that people can drive cars smoothly, right? So we are that highway. We are building that highway. We are building that ONDC rails infrastructure, which allows all these enterprises to basically do seamless transactions, right? For us, basically, we have to go the whole 9 yards. There is nothing that I can say, do this and do that and do this and do that. The second thing is that creates a interesting moat for us if we are there on basically across the horizontal spectrum. And of course there are pros and cons. The going horizontal has a pro and has a con, right? The con is that someone can eat your lunch by becoming very vertical and being very focused. So that something is that you have to watch out. Someone and that has happened in future, in past, sorry, that people have got horizontal and someone has come and said, and someone has come done very well in a vertical and then become horizontal and eaten all your lunches. So that's the con of it. But it's a great question. It's something that we have thought a lot, but we have gone ahead with this strategy.
Yeah, Shayak,
Like, if I may add to what Manoj said. See, Manoj and I are on the same path, right? Theoretically, we are competitors, but practically, I think ONDC is so big that we can't really call ourselves competitors. But there is a benefit to the approach, right? And it's not really truly horizontal if you think about it. The tech stack varies by domain. You're not building buyer apps for education or healthcare. You're building buyer apps for retail. You're not building seller apps for education or healthcare. You're building it for retail. Now you can expand beyond one domain. You can go retail plus B2B or retail plus finance, wherever you see synergies between the two coming up. Like say, for example, you want to create finance and retail because credit and sales go to hand in hand. So the small businesses can get loans. The people who are buying on the transaction can get a loan. So you may want to combine the two. Okay, so this is the first distinction, that you're not really truly horizontal, because truly horizontal would mean that app could be applied in every domain. No, it's not. Second, when you're building this, as a TSP, as a technology service partner, remember there are three categories. The ones who are building specific apps and are going to market to get the buyers and sellers, they're doing that. That's not what a TSP is doing. A technology service partner basically provides their apps to other players who will be doing that. Say, for example, as Utkarsh said, a bank might want to plug in us in their banking app, so that their banking app suddenly became a buyer app. So you went into your mobile banking and you could buy on ONDC, or you could sell on ONDC, right? Or your existing consumer app that you had, you plugged us in, and suddenly your app became a buyer app or a seller app. Now, in order to do that, see, if you're on the buyer side, you will need the buyer app with the IGM and the RSP. It's mandatory. You may choose not to take the logistics, but issue grievance management and reconciliation is mandatory. So if you're on the buyer side, you need three any which way. And there's the same overlap on the seller side. If you need the seller app, you'll need the IGM and RSP any which way. So IGM, RSP, buyer app, seller app is needed any which way. You may or may not do the logistics one. This is the second point, right? Now, the third point is, when you're starting to do this, everyone will want to create their own composable tech stack, which means they already have a tech stack. They're using ERPs, CRMs, accounting systems, right? Your system has to integrate into them. So you have to build it in a composable manner that it plugs into anything. So it's not truly horizontal. It's not covering the spectrum. What it is doing is it's enabling a corporate or a large enterprise that wants to, or a large startup for that matter, that wants to enter ONDC with a ready tech stack, because otherwise it'll take them a year to get there. It's very complex, very regulated. That process takes a lot of learning. Like Manoj will vouch to the same thing that I'm saying. It takes about 12 months to get there. So either you take that TAT or you work with Manoj or us and you basically go live in a month. And then we take care, we ensure that whatever future versions are there, we will always keep you compliant. So it's not horizontal in the way you're looking at it. If it was my app and I was going to market with it, it would have been horizontal. It's actually me as a tech stack.
Got it. So I think what I picked up is the word TSP, right? So you're building
Yes.
layers on top of ONDC to make it easier
Yes.
and more seamless for other platforms like Heyo to come in and jump onto the bandwagon easily.
Providing the best-in-class infrastructure so that everybody can quickly go plug it into their system or optimize it composably however they want to. Think of it like Lego blocks, right? The rails exist, ONDC exists. You put the building blocks on top how you want. Build your own castle. Your castle looks like yours. Somebody else's might be blue. Depends.
So we operate over WhatsApp, and we have been one of the very few WhatsApp partners for the last 2 years, working closely with the WhatsApp India team, and they operate on a very similar model. So they have the BSPs that give out the licenses of using APIs, and now they have the cloud API that is open up. So very, very similar model in order for the right curation and the infrastructure to play in. So yeah, very interesting. So Ankit, I want to ask you a couple of questions. Now that obviously you've been exploring the B2B segment, the creator segment, the solopreneur segment as you go to market. And now that you have known about ONDC, I have two questions. One is, what is your ONDC strategy as a startup? And then second is, what is your advice for people to get involved with ONDC? What is the tangible benefit and how to go about it?
Sure. So Utkarsh, if you look at our journey, we have been building this communication system for the last 10 years. And, it's primarily we believed on that communication is a very strong or a elemental part of, in e-commerce. And, 10 years back when we created My Operator, the whole idea was how do we democratize this technology stack so it can be used by, small, mid-sized businesses easily without really worrying about infrastructure and all. But then, last year and last couple of, quarters when we were talking about, ONDC, and on the other side, there was LLMs, which was a really hot talk of the town. We really believed on a problem. We kind of, of all the things that people are trying to solve because of our journey with communication, because of our experience and understanding of communication, we believed on two things. Number one, with all the number of sellers that ONDC will bring on board and will connect on the network, etc. There is a still a talk which people say about that how do each sellers maintain the quality of the whole aspect. And in the quality there's a customer service which plays a very important role. Now you're talking about a seller really competing with large players. We have very structured communication service or a customer service program or systems. Now we thought when we need to enable, and we look at different problems. So we look at the problem that how do we really provide a system which can help and at a scale to a huge number of sellers to have a communication layer which probably act like a layer which enterprises used to use. Even in My Operator journey, these large organizations used to use these kind of communication stack. So we then we thought, number one, we have to democratize the My Operator journey to focus on much simpler journey. As a Heyo Phone, what different we did from My Operator? Number one, we kept it very mobile first journey, and we merged call and WhatsApp together. We understood, if you see in a SMB space, the call plus WhatsApp is like the entirety of business communication. They do not use emails, they do not use other chats. It's like calls and WhatsApp. And call and WhatsApp has one thing in common, which is the phone number identity. And to have a seamless operativity in after call, follow up, etc., you need to have same number and then move across both the channels. So with that vision, we started Heyo Phone, which is a mobile first communication stack. And the first question was, is it really solving a problem? And we saw a very clear uptake when we launched, and this has been just 3 quarters and we have 10,000 businesses using it. Compare it with the numbers of My Operator, it took us like 8 years to have 5,000 businesses on the platform. Now the scale and the simplicity, even the ONDC, like Utkarsh talk about the simplicity of the journey. That's what the simplicity we even focused on the Heyo Phone journey. That how do we make this whole tech stack so simple that every seller can use it? It do not need to be complex the way we built it 10 years back. It need to be very simple. The other side of the story was the LLMs coming in, and we know how communication as a whole space is getting changed with LLMs coming in. There's like a very different tangent which is built up around LLMs, and that was the second tailwind that we thought we have to really democratize and start focusing on how do the new generation of business, probably 3 years or 5 years they'll start communicating with the customer. And that's what made the whole Heyo Phone journey as it is right now. It's still in the early stage. We have 10,000 customers, but we still think it's just the probably scale problem that we are still addressing. And there's a huge ideas that we can build on how we can really drive from a communication to commerce as a journey. And some part of this is like, imagine yourself interacting with customers, and all these customers are like your customer database, and you can engage them and re-interact them and have your interaction or customer engagement journey probably same powerful as we'd have seen with a large enterprise doing it, same structure as a large enterprise doing it. It just require very less effort because of, again, some of these are solved by LLM, some of these solved by a lot of journeys that we had. And then we make a super communication app for these small businesses. And these two tailwinds make us probably take the direction we are in. Hence, we strongly bullish about the whole ONDC because it's democratizing the thing. And because we are largely focused on SMB as a journey, we really want this to be democratized. Then only these small businesses will actually need a solution to manage customer communication directly. Had it been through marketplaces, probably we would have been selling to marketplaces directly and focusing on the my operator side of the journey, where we're serving, say, Amazon, other large marketplaces. But now we're thinking of breaking it down to a simple tool which can be used by small businesses. And that's where I think one problem in the whole ecosystem we're trying to solve is how do these businesses will manage the customer communication journey.
Okay, great point. So I just want to step here, Utkarsh, just for 1 second.
Please go ahead.
So, if the premise is, again, we're solving a population scale challenge, that means we have to solve it for everybody. And typically how that works is if you solve for the lowest common denominator, that means, the basic attributes that are present in everybody, first thing again, you'll solve it for scale. Now, if that is the premise, one of the key things that, at least in my experience, I've seen is, behavior is a friction point. And when, and if you ask somebody to change their behavior, that's a battle that takes a lot of time, and that time might not be something that you have. And, that's why we've seen in the past 15, 20 years, technology startups scaling up immensely, because what they tech allows you to do is to sort of mirror that behavior and sort of sneak a small incremental change into that behavior instead of somebody making a huge change in the behavior. And that's how we see technology playing a very, very pivotal part at ONDC, especially the technology system solution providers. And the main premise being, if you can bring the tech to mirror the existing behavior, let's say, let's pick up suppliers, what the supply side, what the merchants have, 95% of the merchants have, you've done it. You solved the population skills challenge. So it's more about getting the tech there. And, this will involve, of course, conversational, it will involve a lot of AI, or machine learning, at least, not AI, machine learning, a lot of stuff. But the idea is to, whatever, as a small retailer sitting in Cooch Behar, which is in West Bengal, whatever I was doing yesterday, I'm still doing the same thing, but suddenly I'm connected to ONDC and I'm transacting. So that's the problem statement that we have to solve.
Got
And
it.
Utkarsh, you said that you do this on WhatsApp. That's a very, very good way to solve what Utkarsh Ji said. So the point basically is, can a vegetable vendor, here's the problem, right? Illustrating it. Can a vegetable vendor cart chala raha hai, ek phone se ek photo le liya, takes a photo, can that be converted to a catalog? Can he get his orders on WhatsApp and say, yes, ship? Can that customer be standing in front of him and buying on that app? This is basically where you have to take it to enable it to that extent, right? That's why we're talking about AI, which is, we talk about all these voice to text or image to text or language translation or catalog AI or conversational commerce. This is all basically boiling down to that one experience.
Or Shayak, to that point, if I'm a consumer, do I really need to download an app, or can I
you can
use
go to
a WhatsApp
and say
number
hi
to order through ONDC? So, order through that. So on both sides, see.
Exactly.
So I, like, for all the members in the audience who are interested in ONDC, Is the question to you, Utkarsh and Shayak. How does one onboard onto ONDC? What's the quickest, simplest way? Where is the documentation? What are the
Okay, no, so I'll take that up, Shayak, quickly
Yeah, yeah.
on this, because this is an official ONDC question. Okay, so
Yes.
there are a bunch of roles that you can participate in an ONDC, but let's talk about a seller. If you want to sell on ONDC, there are two things that you can do. If you have a tech team, you're good at, you want to invest 2-3 months in building the tech stacks, and you can integrate your existing e-commerce presence into ONDC. Or second, you can reach out to the list of registered TSPs on the ONDC website, which includes, of course, Eunimart and Plotch as well. And you can talk to them and go to market faster. So this is one way to do it. Now, if this is something that is not don't want to invest management bandwidth or don't want to integrate yourself at all, then you can connect to the listed seller network participants again on our website to list yourself as a seller in their seller aggregator marketplaces. And these are seller aggregators, so they can digitize your catalog and they can list you. Of course, both approaches have their pros and cons, benefits and advantages, and I leave it up to the sellers. If you're a consumer, you can go to any of the consumer applications listed on the ONDC website, and you can access the ONDC network out there. So ONDC doesn't have its own application because ONDC is a network, but it has ONDC protocol compliant consumer applications. So they are Paytm, PhonePe, Craftsvilla, not PhonePe, sorry, PhonePe is pin code, Craftsvilla, My Store, a lot of them. You can again look at the website, but the list is ever evolving and ever changing. So yeah, these are the ways you can come on to ONDC as a consumer or a seller. Yes.
Got it. And is there a glossary of documentation or terms that
Yes,
put
yes,
out?
yes.
Can you please share the link for the
so
audience?
What you have to do is, you have to go on the website and fill a participant. So if you're a seller, it's pretty simple. You contact your seller marketplace, or you connect to the network yourself and become a network participant. Anybody who connects to the ONDC network, we call them a network participant. Whether it's a consumer application, then it's a buyer application. And if it is a seller side participant, it can be a seller marketplace or a D2C brand individual seller. So it is a seller network participant for us. So becoming a seller NP is a well-documented process on the website. You can go, you can fill out an NP profile form if you're an enterprise, and quickly go through the motions, which is one, we have these weekly calls on Tuesday, Fridays, Mondays. All of that information is sent after you fill the NP profile form. Now, if you want to be a seller, just reach out to the seller network participants or to the TSPs on how to do that. And this process is well documented. There's an integration guide. Even if you want to build tech for ONDC, there's a specific, every sort of resource is available in that integration. That's how you get on the ONDC.
Utkarsh, also wasn't ONDC running a WhatsApp number where you could go and ask questions and get
Yes. So yeah, so we've not publicly launched it. So, but that's mostly focused on the sellers finding seller NPs.
Sellers, yes, yeah.
Because that's the idea. Because typically, what we've seen is if you are interested in building tech or buying tech for ONDC, it's better you go to the website. It's more detailed. So that's mostly concerned with sellers trying to find the closest seller aggregator to get onto ONDC.
Awesome. No, that's super tactical, Utkarsh. Thank you so much. We are coming very close to the end of our webinar. So I will just have my last question running. But I would urge the audience who are present here, if you have any more questions, please post in the chat. And Ishita and Sanad, if you want to run a quick poll to get a pulse of the audience, feel free to do that now. And with that, my last question to all the panelists here would be, how do you see the e-commerce ONDC trend going in the next 2 to 3 years? Like, how would the world look like according to you, say in 2025? So Utkarsh, you can go ahead.
Okay, I'll go first.
In the horse's mouth.
Yeah, so actually we don't know, if somebody, when the internet was sort of discovered and the new protocol was discovered with HTTP, nobody would have predicted, a Google or a Plotch or a Eunimart coming into existence. So we actually don't know. Networks are totally, as Manoj mentioned, are totally different evolved beasts. And see, ONDC itself is not one thing, one caveat, is not a single business model. It is a capability. Again, you can build multiple business models, and we leave it up to businesses to sort of build that capability. So how it's going to be, we don't know, but it's going to be big. And the second thing is, it's not only limited to India right now. We are doing the first pilot transaction for a B2B transaction, which is a cross-border transaction with the, this thing. I think it was in the news as well for some time back, but more on that. So this is something that's, I think, going to revolutionize the way commerce is, and open up whole new markets for, not only populations, but, different countries.
Got it. Ankit, you want to go next on this? Now, do you see your businesses and future organizations that you run kind of fall into this whole ecosystem going forward?
Sure. So we see ourselves as a, the tech service provider, and not maybe the core, core journey provider, but a lateral journey, which is of customer communication. More and more, sellers coming on board, and they individually managing their customer base, etc. That's where we see we would be empowering them manage their customers better. That's a journey that we are following. We really want to change how, and especially the ONDC is, again, one tailwind, then the other is the LLM, using both. And the leverage that we have, because we have the telephony infrastructure, we have, that WhatsApp communication layers built on top of it. We really want to use that as a leverage and build that for maybe a very different scale masses. As we said, probably as a my operator journey, we were serving, 5,000 businesses. These were like mid-sized businesses, large businesses. But now I'm thinking on literally, a million kind of number in next 3 years of time. This is the kind of numbers, we think we would be enabling in terms of managing their customer communication, customer engagement way better than what it is now. There's a huge idea that we are working on, and we think, it's a very different, future that we see after all these, current trends. If you follow, there's a vision that, where it takes us, and that's what we are building it for.
So one thing that we're sure of, coming back to Ankit's point, we might not be sure of the future, how it's going to look like. One thing we're sure of, at least, 10 to 12 unicorns and 15 soonicorns, because the network success will be hindered on network participants or the participant success. And then by extension, technology solution provider success. And that's the trend that we're seeing. And we're pretty confident of this. In fact, Antler had also come out with, some quote on this. So, what we are sure of is at least, big unicorns and soonicorns coming out of ONDC, and multiple of them. Yeah.
So, Utkarsh, on that point, I was going through the question and answers on the chat. Somebody has asked a very good question. So, what is the incentive for people on all these sides of the table? Can you highlight? We have talked a lot about tech and scale and distribution, but how do you see
why does it make business sense? Is that the question?
How all does it make business sense? Is the question.
Okay, so it's fairly simple, and I think Manoj and Shayak have sort of touched upon this point. Once a free market is enabled on the network, let's take a specific use case. Right now, you're a big seller, you transact on platform A. A could stand for anything. Okay, don't quote me here. And suddenly the platform decides to raise its commission to 30%, 35%, and they're doing it so because they've burned billions of dollars, and now it's time to pay up for profitability. And what can you do? You can't really move from platform A. If you go to platform B, then you lose all your reputation. And once you lose all your reputation, that means, whatever ratings, etc., you've sort of created on platform A, you can't take it to platform B, and then you have to start all over again. And then you're on the 120th page of search result for your catalog, and XYZ. Now with the ONDC, what it enables on the seller side is to have a network-wide reputation. That means whether you're coming from a seller aggregator A or a seller aggregator B, and a seller's network participants' main job is to help you upload a catalog, order, do order management and inventory management. That's it, the seller side activities. Now suddenly you can go from seller A to seller B, and now seller platform A to seller platform B, and now seller platform A and B have to actually compete to keep your business, because you carry your reputation with you. And what we see is commissions going down. And again, seller platform A and B are not focused in consumer acquisition. Now there's no burn. Now, every transaction that a seller does on their platform, they get a commission out of it, right? And suddenly the commissions on the seller side go down because you don't have to actually spend on anything, and that's the economics of it. And on the consumer application side, it's the same thing. Consumer applications, so if I am, let's say I'm taking an example, these names are not for reference. For example, I'm a Paytm. I spend X billions of dollars and build up a payments platform, UPI platforms, etc., etc. Now this consumer, I've already spent the consumer acquisition cost here. Now I can monetize him. I can push that existing traffic into an e-commerce transaction. So if I am a consumer application on the ONDC network, what I will broadcast to all the seller applications is that I have a consumer and they're willing to buy XYZ item. I'm going to charge a buyer finder fee, which is Y%. Now what the seller has to pay is, whatever the seller application is charging, which will be X%, and Y% buyer finder fee, and plus, whatever. And this is typically, now you could say that, let's take up two examples, and again, not for quoting, but these are, let's say, PIN code and Paytm. And this is not true. The numbers that are, sort of state will be made up. But Paytm says, I'm going to charge somebody ordering food 5%, and PIN code says I'm going to charge them 10%. Now, all the sellers that agree with a 5% buyer finder's fee, only their catalog will be visible on those applications. For example, in a PIN code where, they're charging 10% buyer finder fee, but the sellers, and by extension seller apps, will have some sellers that don't want to pay that higher fee. So their catalogs won't be visible on PIN code, but they will be visible on Paytm. Now, suddenly, as a consumer, the access to the universe is the same. But because of different buyer finder fee commissions, you see a lesser assortment on app 2 versus app 1. And then you're gravitated towards app 1. So what we are seeing, and this is not theoretical anymore, what we are seeing is actually, fair competition across, consumer side applications and seller side applications. And the testament to this fact is to jumpstart the network, what ONDC decided, because it's a cold start problem. You have to have people use the network. We decided on certain bunch of incentives for consumer applications. Now, the next month, we halved the incentives. And, typically common sense in a closed platform will dictate that the transactions will go down. No, the transactions actually doubled or tripled, because what happened is that the overall economics are so competitive for sellers compared to other platforms, that what they decided that they don't need to have, as much pricing as they need to have in other platforms. And they had sort of reduced their price, and they were happy with those commissions. And, overall the consumer and the seller won. Everybody had. So that's how the logic of economics works on ONDC, and that's the incentive. For sellers, it's fairly simple. For consumer apps, it is that you have a certain audience, etc., and you're a greenfield consumer app. Now you only have to worry about customer acquisition and not seller acquisition and management. That's it.
It's very well put, Utkarsh. It was a very holistic answer. So, Manoj, what do you think about the future? And also, if you could add a few lines about what could the nemesis of ONDC be? Like, if this is amazing, right? I mean, we can all see the benefits.
Yeah.
What are the risk factors that will make in ONDC not a great success? What do you think are those factors, and how can the ecosystem kind of navigate through this?
Because that's a interesting question you're asking. So basically, I'm an entrepreneur. We live in a very, very optimistic scenarios always, because
That's
we don't
the
think
reason I asked this
pessimistic
question.
scenarios. And that's what keeps us awake every day. Otherwise, we'll be dead. But fundamentally, see, it's a network, right? See, when I keep saying that in other webinars also, the outcomes here will be digital, right? Personally, this is my personal belief. Either there's going to be a very large network, or it's going to be zero, right? It primarily mid-scale networks have very little meaning for a lot of folks, right? Mid-scale networks come down, right? So why it will come to zero and why it will go to one, like trillion. I personally believe it's going to be $1 trillion network, right? That's basically is the vision which we are pushing ourselves and building things. But why it would come down is there can be multiple reasons. For example, can we build what let's say we're not able to give a very smooth experience. It always starts with the customer and the seller experience, right? These edges of the network has to be happy, otherwise we will never be able to build a network, right? And this edge problems is something that we need to solve as a network, as together, that edge has to be happy. Now for one edge of the network, let's say customer is not able to buy seamlessly, and customer doesn't care if it's ONDC, non-ONDC. For them, basically, I got a pizza, I'm hungry, I should get 30 minutes, otherwise it just I don't like it, kind of stuff, right? For customer, that experience has to be there irrespective of whether they're using ONDC, non-ONDC, right? So that, I think, that edge has to be around experience of the customer. The seller has two problems. One is catalog and inventory. So pushing the product has to be very, very simple, and basically the payment should land immediately. I mean, it is a fundamental problem for a seller if payment is not coming on time. The far edge problems are that is where the kirana wala is sitting, the veggie vendor is sitting, right? These far edges, for them, the payment has to be instantaneous. They don't have working capital, right? The other far edge of the network is I think what Shayak was referring to, is people who are multilingual, cannot, don't know how to type and all those things. That far edge has to, maybe just use voice, or should be able to just use in a very simple way, able to transact, right? So fundamentally starts with that. If we have to basically make this network successful, we have to make these edges of the network very, very super happy, seamless, frictionless, like UPI did with QR code. That's my short answer. I can keep on speaking about a lot of other things.
So India is a trust deficit society, right? I mean, everybody on the panel would agree. And trust really plays a big factor in these kind of marketplaces. So where do you see the role of trust and curation kind of playing in this interleaving of networks?
Yeah. So basically, I actually don't call buyer app and seller app. A lot of times I call them trust nodes. A lot of trust actually in the network is driven by these network apps, buyer app and seller app. These are trust nodes in a lot of ways, right? They are the people who are gatekeepers. They are the people who needs to ensure that everything is happening in the right way, and the network is behaving properly, right? And there is a triangle of trust that we usually present. It's based on a rating, that the rating of the sellers and the any participant, can be buyer, seller app, buyer app, product. The rating has to be there in the network, so that I can actually get trust that this is a good seller and this is a bad seller, kind of stuff. Payments, RSP, which basically is driving payments, real-time payments, instant payment. So payment is another part of the triangle of trust. And then the grievance management. If I got a bad pizza, I should be able to get my refund, right? These three form a triangle of trust for us. And again, this is related to two edges of the network. These two edges have to be, happy, kind of stuff. Yeah, trust is a very important part. Yes.
Yeah, I think solving for trust will solve for a lot of things. I mean, like
Yes.
back in the days when Airbnb was launching in India, they did not want to enter the Indian market because it was so trust deficit. They're like, we don't want to spend $2 billion trying to teach people what the concept of Airbnb is. Let other players like Oyo kind of come in and crack the Indian market, and will come 5 years later. Now you can see Airbnbs reaching far and wide in the Indian market. Like same with Uber. And you mentioned about the capital aspect of merchants on the seller side. Even like Uber and Ola had to literally make sure that the payments reach on time at the end of the working day. I think now it's a working day cycle instead of the monthly cycle. So I think those are problems that India as a market faces, and not being traditionally not seen in other markets outside of India. So great answer. Thanks, Manoj, for that. So Shayak, the penultimate question to you, and then over to you, Ankit. So Shayak, now see, this is a gold rush. We all agree to it. amazing new tech, new wave coming in. As entrepreneurs, as D2C brands, how do we jump into this gold rush and from which angle? What are the personas and use cases? And if you fall into it, we can just get going on that. What do you think?
Just extending on Manoj's trust thing, you're moving from a trusted ecosystem to a trustless ecosystem. Okay. A trusted ecosystem means I trust Amazon. There is a carrier of trust, a ledger of trust. A trustless ecosystem is where there is no ledger of trust. The system ensures that you don't need to trust anybody in particular. So the triangle of trust that Manoj spoke, that is the infrastructure that ONDC is putting in place. The scoring of the sellers across all apps, the issue and grievance management protocol across all apps, the reconciliation and settlement protocol across all apps ensures that there is very little that anybody can do to defraud anybody. So trust doesn't need to be driven by any player by the virtue of their branding anymore. So it's moving from a trusted ecosystem to a trustless ecosystem, like we do in blockchain, right? We move from a ledger to a ledgerless, as in a blockchain ledger. Anyways, coming back to the question which you asked, I think this is possibly the best thing that could have happened for D2C brands, honestly speaking. D2C brands have had two options: go to Shopify or something like that, right? And there the difficulty was acquiring customers. You have to spend so much money to acquire customers. Or you have to go to a marketplace where you have to give away a huge percentage of your revenue. On average, you look at D2C brands transaction, you'll see about 50% goes away to the platform, 15% category commission, 15% supply chain, 15 to 20% marketing. Now, this ONDC actually is amazing. You know why? First of all, the search algorithm does not allow anybody to manipulate anything. Everybody has to be seen. You cannot manipulate the search algorithm, which means there's no sponsored. Nobody decides who comes on page one. It's first come, first serve. If you search for a query, who came first, they came on page one, right? And then the buyer can choose to sort. So marketing goes down automatically. You can still do brand building outside of the network, but in the network, you don't have to pay any gatekeeper. Your cost of supply chain goes down. Why? Because in a particular platform, you have to pay what the platform has decided, or you go before and you decide the rates with the shipping company who gives you the rates based on how many transactions you're doing, how many shipping you're doing with them. But on ONDC, this is dynamic rate. At the time of the order, just like you are searching for a shoe or a shirt, the seller is searching for logistics. And all the 5 or 10 logistics partners will send their rates instantly. And all of them will try to send the lowest rate to win it, driving the cost down. Right? It's a public bid. So the cost of supply chain goes down from about 18-20% to about 8 to 10%. Lastly, so cost goes down from about 50% to about 15-16% of the order value. Complexity goes down. Why? Because you don't have to go position yourself on 10 different platforms, learn how to do marketing on 10 different platforms, learn how to do supply chain on no. You figure out one seller app, and that's it. You can even run your own seller app and give the best possible options there. And third, in terms of going live, you have 3 options. You go with an existing seller app. So you go to a seller app which is already live, list that. Many people have done that. We recently launched Lego that way as a seller app, right? We launched Lego in India that way. The second, people like Boat, they have created their own individual seller apps. ISN, it's an inventory seller node. Where nobody third party is selling, you are selling. But why are you creating that app? So that you get control over your data, over your pricing, over your commissions. You control that. So it's a one-time cost to build it, but after that, it's very easy to manage. That you don't need to drive demand. Remember, the demand is coming from the buyer side. And the third is you build your own marketplace seller node where you enable others to sell through you also. Now, of course, as a D2C brand, you can also go on the buyer side, but typically a D2C brand is not on the buyer side, they're on the seller side. So that's how you jump into ONDC. It's quite easy. Typically for a Kirana, just to put things in perspective, it should not take more than 5-6 minutes to go live. And it's very easy. You just go on WhatsApp, type a few things, you are live, right? Typically for a D2C, even if you're integrating with your internal systems, it should not take more than 4 or 5 days at best. It should be all composable. But yeah, if you're a corporate, like you're a large corporate and you want to set up large infrastructures, then yes, it may take up to 3 to 4 weeks. That's typically the approach that you should be taking to ONDC. It is easy, you don't need to do all sides, and it is very composable.
That's a lot of learning. I don't have a D2C brand, but when we do, we'll definitely check out ONDC now. So Ankit, I think this was a great session. I personally learned a lot. I'm sure many of the participants really liked it, and I can see a couple of comments as well that this session was very, very helpful. So Ankit, any closing thoughts around the future as you see it as a serial entrepreneur?
Sure. So, I definitely would be able to see it as much outsider because I do not have that insight, which other panelist has. But, I'm just trying to relate it to a few past events that has happened in India. And we all would agree how Aadhaar, how UPIs has changed the systems. And, people have talked about that this is much larger than what has happened in the past. And, we can just imagine the possibilities of it. Though I completely agree what Manoj also said, it's like if it succeed and there is a very high probability, and as an entrepreneur, we'd always like to believe that it succeed. It's like $1 trillion thing. It's like something, something unprecedented globally, something which is, which hasn't been done anywhere, and which is going to change how the whole ecosystem will work in the future. And I think that not only, I think the core service provider, there would be need of a lot of lateral services, there would be need of a lot of ecosystem partners. And I think we as an entrepreneur, I'm looking at as a huge change that we have to ride upon. There's a huge tailwind that's gonna impact how the whole commerce is done, and that's probably a lot of things are beyond imagination what it can happen. Imagine I think probably 5-6 years back we still can't imagine how UPI would have made life easy. I think we all have stopped carrying cash. It's like UPI everywhere, and imagine this kind of impact then the commerce level. That's what just we are able to see. I think this is going to be huge.
I can Ankit, I can resonate. So like just 2 days back, one of our colleagues lost his wallet, and nobody really cared because like nobody keeps cash. We're like, you're gonna be fine. Just block the cards. You have your phone. Life will be sorted. This wasn't even possible like a couple of years back. I think so. ONDC will be that shift.
So my question to him would be, why was he carrying wallet now? I mean, I do not carry a wallet. I do not see any need of carrying wallet now.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, all the panelists. Thank you to the audience. It was such a pleasure being here. So I will just name our community partners who enabled this to happen. So 10,000 Startups, Head Start, Success Brew, Draper Startup House, Founder Circle, and AIC Nalanda. So these are all community partners, and through them, we reached out to almost 10,000 people over the last few days and invited them to be part of this session. And close to 150 people registered from variety of different organizations. And this was amazing. So I could see, I mean, personally know a lot of people. So I could see a lot of founders, decision makers, CXOs from the likes of Amazon, Dunzo, Big Basket, Paytm, a host of VC funded startups here joining us in this webinar. So thank you, everybody. With that, let's close the session. And panelists, if you want to share your email IDs and contact details, feel free to do it. If you want members to connect. So I have dropped my LinkedIn ID and email ID if anybody wants to get in touch. But aside from that, the Heyo team will be reaching out to everybody. And if any questions were not answered, we'll try to answer individually one-on-one after the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great session.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Very enlightened. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.